Okay, welcome back. Everybody have a good lunch. This is a nice way when it's a Spanish summit, like you have some time to actually connect, have a little vino. Anyway, for those who don't know me yet, my name is Anais Janssens. I'm the director of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center at IE University. It's a university based in Madrid, and we are the top 5 in the world for entrepreneurship. So I get to do a lot of fun stuff like this. And this particular summit is actually very special because of what we're focusing on, right? How can change makers, how can we do good? Well, this panel is going to address a very, very tricky topic, I think, which is very necessary. I got it here. The role of finance in catalyzing social progress in a future economy. For that, we have an incredible expert panel. Unfortunately, which one was it? ¿Cuál era? Yeah, Miguel. Miguel couldn't make it, but luckily we have Raúl from COFIDES. I'm going to say them all, and then I'm going to ask for a big applause. Borja from Citibank Social Finance, Tim from Alphamundi, Linn-Cecilie from LUMO Labs, and moderating this very interesting conversation is going to be Anais from Oxfam. Please give them a very, very big applause. Find your picture, guys.
Problema de identidad.
Tim. So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this to our session. So it's a big pleasure for me, really, to moderate this really distinguished panel today. So we are all here representing different actors working in sustainable and impact finance, and we have a very ambitious objective today. So we have 40 minutes to really rethink the role of the financial sector in the social progress. So the role of finance to catalyze social progress in a future economy, so it's our main focus of the conversation today. So the reason why we are having this conversation is quite obvious. The financial sector holds an immense potential to really generate a positive and sustainable impact on a large scale. But we still face significant challenges. So an unequal and unsustainable financial system that's still existing, and also an increasing funding needs to achieve the sustainable development goals. So how can the financial sector really be a catalyzer for social progress? Where are the gaps? What are solutions? What are also innovative mechanisms and partnerships and approaches to address these challenges? And what is really needed to accelerate this? So this is going to be the focus of our conversation today. And just before we start, and I'll give you the floor, dear colleagues, just a few words about Oxfam and why we are also on this panel. So Oxfam, we are an international NGO with a mission to eradicate poverty and fight against injustice. So we are a global confederation and work in over 80 countries around the world. So one of our main focus area is the promotion of just economies, and here, of course, the focus on promoting a more fair and sustainable financial sector is one of our main objectives. And so we do this in our work here with the financial sector at 2 main levels. So first is on advocating in the different financial actors for more accountable, responsible, and sustainable criteria in the financial industry. So we really press on bankers, insurers to really raise the bar in terms of impact and human rights criteria. And we do this, for example, with our Fair Finance initiative, which assess the level of integration of ESG and human rights criteria within banks, insurance companies, and also pension funds in different countries. And secondly, we do this with through impact investments. So we provide different financial services for underserved SMEs and also communities around the world. So we have different impact investment funds in microfinance, in SME finance that we are running in emerging and frontier markets. And to start the conversation, I would really like to invite you all to first maybe introduce yourself and maybe also give us your insight in terms of what have you seen, what progress you have seen a little bit in the financial sector towards more social progress. And maybe Tim, I'd like to start with you. So you are one of the pioneers in the impact investment sector. So tell us a bit more about what you are doing and what has been your experience.
Thank you so much, Anais. It's nice to be here. I'm Tim Radjy, the founder of Alphamundi Group. I used to work in traditional finance and banking in Switzerland. I'm based in Geneva. I used to work for UBS mostly. And in 2008, I created Alphamundi Group, and since then we've invested about $125 million in impact ventures in Latin America and Africa. We also have a nonprofit foundation that's deployed about $10 million in grants for technical assistance. So I'm definitely a believer that we can innovate in finance for sustainability and the global good, but it's not an easy journey. And if you look at maybe the big picture worldwide, the first thing is, based on 2022 data, we know that there were about $100 trillion managed by financial institutions worldwide, and about 45% of that was invested with an ESG lens, right? Environment, social, and environmental and governance lens. And based on the latest information we have from the Global Impact Investing Network, about $2 trillion of those 100 trillion are invested with a measurable and positive impact, right? So that gives you a sense of the scale. If we want to transform the financial industry globally to finance a transition to a more sustainable economy, to a more socially inclusive, we still have a long way to go, because the majority of financial assets today are not invested in a sustainable way, and they're not invested in a way that allows you to measure what impact they're generating, right? So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is that we have the Sustainable Development Goals, and according to the United Nations, about 25% of the goals will be achieved by 2030 if we keep at the same pace, right? So this is a failure of the global society and of the financial industry to find ways to mobilize capital for the SDGs in time before we reach critical thresholds that can hurt humanity. And of that, according to Spain NAB in 2023, you have about $1.5 billion invested for impact, right? So we, together on this panel, we can show you from different perspectives, the public sector, banks, and the European impact investing sector, that it is possible to innovate for impact and to shift the financial industry, but it's not easy, right? And it's going to take, there's no magic bullet. And I would just finish my first opening statement by saying we're going to need a lot of different instruments to move the financial industry and to catalyze funding for the SDGs in time by 2030. And these instruments include, regulatory incentives and frameworks, as well as public subsidies. They include transforming the incentives of pension funds and banks and asset managers, maybe even reinterpreting what is the fiduciary duty. And in Europe, we have a new set of regulations called SFDR that bring transparency to how we manage portfolios and force financial institutions to disclose how sustainable they are in their investments. That's a really good first step towards transparency. And ultimately, we also need to educate all the asset owners, whether it's private investors to those who make the decisions in the pension funds and other asset management companies, about impact investing. Impact investing is not a dirty word. It's not a very small thing that's going to stay there. Impact investing is the fastest growing segment in the financial industry. We have a set of standards that allow us to measure very precisely what social and environmental impact we achieve, and there is no limit to growth, right? If we have $2 trillion invested already in impact investing, it means it can grow a lot more. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tim. Raul, you want to go next, please?
Okay. We agree that we are going to, not to give monologues, we are going to discuss and dialogue. I hope too that we can have. The first thing, I think, what is impact? If we will be able, I think, 2004, 2025, it will be the year of the impact around the world. I think I'm not Miguel Tiana. This is Raul Sanchez. I'm the person who manages the Social Impact Fund. What I think is one of the most revolutionary instruments in Europe to change what the things are doing today. I think we are talking about different figures, but the real thing is we are not able to define what is impact around Europe, around different countries. We'll be facing impact washing, we'll be facing a lot of different things that are different to impact. In our case, COFIDES is a state-owned company that manages public funds, around 6 billion. For the last year, our company was revolutionary under the umbrella of the Minister of Economy and the Spanish government. having a fund and the next generation funds to really make the difference, to say, okay, we can support this ecosystem, it's an impact ecosystem that we have in Spain, with the idea to strengthen what we are doing, supporting different type of projects, and no matter who the beneficiary is, no matter who is the tool that you need for the social impact project, but the main idea is to transform the reality that we have. I'm not going to explain hundreds of projects that we are facing now, but what I think is really important is how we think we are able to change the things that we have now.
Thank you. And thank you for being here, inviting me. I'm Linn. I'm a partner in LUMO Labs. For those who don't know LUMO Labs, we are a venture VC. So we invest in Europe, pan-European fund, into great founders who use disruptive technologies to solve one of 4 SDGs, and sustainable cities, climate action, health and education. So that's what we invest in. And we truly believe that its impact is profit because of impact. So we don't see this as a philanthropical thing, but it's more impact because of a business case, basically. We see a big shift from governments, from legislation, from measurements, driving towards positive impact. And at the same time, we see a lot of talent wanting to work in these sectors. So for us, it's also a calculation in that, of course. I also want to pick up on some of the numbers you mentioned as well, Tim, because according to the GIN, the Global Impact Investment Network, the impact, I hear a lot in conferences like this, or maybe actually not in this crowd, but in other crowds, that impact is niche. That it's just a small market, it's just like for philanthropists, there is a very, very niche market. And I truly believe that's wrong. And according to the GIN, the current market for impact investing is around $1 to $2 trillion US, but it's growing with more than 20% annually. And that, of course, has a compounding effect. So before we reach less than 10 years from now, this will be more than $8 trillion US worth. So I think that there is a massive effect and a pull now towards impact, which is good. So I would say end it with that and just say let's make impact the new normal.
Thank you, Linn. Borja.
Thank you very much. My name is Borja Garcia. I'm the head of structuring in Latin America in Citi Social Finance. Just briefly on social finance and what we do at Citi, this is an activity that the bank has been doing the last 20 years. It was called Citi Microfinance. But long story short, what happened in 2021 is that we issued a 1 billion social bonds, and the mandate was expanded to do access to basic services, access to basic infrastructure, and financial inclusion. This is an activity that we do across 45 markets in emerging markets. But again, if you want to know more about Citi Social Finance, happy to do it after the panels. I think that the important here and the main challenge that I see, and particularly in my case that I joined the team 3 years ago, I developed majority of my career in development by finance institutions like Inter-American Development Bank, BII, the UK Development Finance Institutions. And I moved to Citi with that kind of utopic view of potentially change things, right? Because to me, the main challenge that we have is how we align the incentives between all these institutions, right? You have development banks that probably they need to take more risks of what they take. When you are sitting there, you don't want to take it for different reasons. Then I'm in the private sector now, and then you have a lot of challenge trying to work with these institutions because you don't like the kind of economics that you have and the blended finance incentives. So I think that to me, the main challenge that the financial sector is having, because all the banks, including Citi, have these ambitions of 1 trillion of sustainability assets by 2030, but it's how we align all the incentives between development banks, public sector, private sector, to really work together and move the agenda. Otherwise, this is not going to work, is what I think.
Thank you very much, everybody. So I think what we hear is really that there is really good perspective for the growth of the sector, and really like great, innovation is already happening among the financial sector. But it seems that we are not moving fast enough. I think, Tim, you gave like good number on this. So what are really the barriers that you are confronting and that you see in the sector that really we need to address to move forward? Who would like to start? Tim, go on.
Well, I'd like to mention one open for the conversation, which is the perception of financial returns versus impact returns.
Yeah.
I think a lot of asset owners have the impression that if you invest for impact, you're going to earn less money, right? You're going to be doing a trade-off, and you're going to take more risk or take more time. And in fact, the data that we see from the markets if we define what market returns are, and if it's equity or listed bonds, right, you can see that impact performance has matched the financial returns of traditional markets over the last 10 years. So this is a
But
false...
I think, let me interrupt.
Yeah, sure, please.
We have a problem because the problem that we measure the economic impact, I think, is under a model that is really old-fashioned. I think, in my opinion, is one of the main barriers that we have. How do you measure, for example, to save a life? How do you measure when you have a disabled person having some employment that previously is really impossible to obtain? But you can measure, you have also provide an economic value. At the same time, you have an economic impact and economic figures. And I think it's one of the problems that also we have with impact investment funds, with VC funds, and also with some large institutions. We measure with the same tools, with the same way that we were doing. We are not going to change anything because this economic, also this impact ecosystem is not going to change never if we are not able to align the incentive or really great and big banks with all the institutions. Some ways it's because you have a regulation, some ways because you really believe on what you are doing. I think we have to be able to show. It's a challenge, I think, for us.
I love this because one of the issues that we have is if you look at listed equity and bonds, usually negative externalities, negative impact is not valued in the price that you buy or sell the equity for, right? So for example, Nestlé, if they wanted to compensate their carbon emissions for 2023, they would lose 66% of their net profits in 2023, right? So just to give you a sense. And by the same token, when we have positive impact through impact funds, we're not monetizing the positive impact, right? So this is missing from the positive financial returns still. And hopefully that can change. I don't know how you guys see this, but...
No, I agree. And I think the way to measure it, that's a whole different conversation as well, right? And I'm quite happy that we now in Europe at least have SFDR 8 and 9 for the fund management side. Although it's not perfect, at least it's starting to be a more conform measurement system for the impact funds. But I also see a lot of what you are saying as well, with financial returns. In these cases, we invest very early stage, pre-seed and seed, into companies. And the VC model was brilliant when it was invented, like with B2B SaaS companies, very less complex technology, high scalable, high to sell, very easy to roll out, basically with the tech boom. Nowadays, us included, and a lot of other VCs are doing more capital-intensive investments, also investing into much more complex technologies that also have governments as their clients. So I really also see the need for a lot of cooperation between both institutional banks and also, of course, governments. I'm very happy about this initiative to both support the fund managers, but also support the companies because they need much more capital to make these solutions really make the difference and the impact that they deserve to do and that we need for the future.
And I think that, just no comment the same, but you talk a lot about returns, and I think that the other key point is about the perceived risk, right? I think that in many cases, what we are seeing is that, and we have endless conversation about blended finance, the need of first coverage, and what I say many times is maybe we need to educate the investors, including myself, Citi, and my colleagues, about that when you take a look to the risks of these portfolios, I'm much, much better than in many cases other asset class, right? So I think that there is an important part, not only on the returns, but also on the perceived risk that the market has with this kind of asset, particularly we're talking about emerging markets assets. And then the other point is about impact, right? Because as of today, I think that everybody's measuring impact in a different way. So there is no homogeneous way on how the different asset classes are measured, right? So I think that these 2 points are really important on the equation in addition to returns, right?
I totally agree with you. We have an example in Spain. If you look at the figures of the ethical banking, the non-default of the ethical banking is really lower than the financial system. For example, Triodos or institutions like this, they have like 57% of non-default compared to the financial system that is really it's 35, 33. It's something that you say is the perceived
risk.
perception of all the people who are managing the decision in the institution. It's something that we have to change.
And I would like to share an example on risk, because changing risk perception is absolutely fundamental to move more capital towards SDGs and impact. And there was a product that was launched recently by the MacArthur Foundation, IFC, and Alliance, right? Alliance is big private sector managers. And it was 3 layers of risk. So MacArthur Foundation was taking the first loss, IFC was taking second level of loss, and therefore the institutional investors could come in and they put more than $100 million in an impact product that would have been impossible for any pension fund to invest in if you didn't have these 2 layers of first losses. Mm-hmm. And what's cool about it, because in Switzerland we've had the same experience for microfinance, is that normally these layers of protection are actually not necessary. So investors, after 3, 4, 5 years, they realize that these layers of protection are not necessary, and then they can follow on with other investments, but without the protection anymore, because they understand the value and the benefits and the risk of that market. So I think we also have, public sector actors like COFIDES have a key role to play in helping the market get there by doing de-risking, even if the de-risking is not in fact necessary sometimes.
I think de-risking and also giving credibility what we are doing. We are talking about, for example, in our case, in the Social Impact Fund, we must deploy 400 million until August 26. But I think the most important thing that we have done is to set up a legal framework to define what is impact investment. I think this is really most important what did the 400 million. Why? Because if we would like to change how companies include the social returns of what they are doing, I'm dreaming in 27 we'll have tax incentive for that type of institution or type of companies decide, okay, if you are giving, I think, to the society a return that really save public expenditure, you will have some incentives. Imagine the revolutionary in Spain. We have, for example, big corporation. We have like 450. We have around. We are talking about the ecosystem is 1.4. It's really small. Imagine we are able to more than 3 million of companies that we have in Spain that they only a 10% or 30% of these companies, SMEs, and companies, they include really the purpose of achieving also economic impact and also social sensibility. Today, I think nobody, you can imagine what happened with the social responsibility 20 years ago. You remember? I worked for that time in a foundation. I prepared the strategy on social responsibility, and after 70 days, I quit the foundation. Because I asked one question to all the big corporates that were in my board. What is the social responsibility in your company? And for this single question, the answer was marketing, institutional relations, etc., etc., etc. I think with the impact investment, we are today in this specific moment. We are in the moment to change how is the perception of the impact investment. We are in really the moment that I hope, I have this dream, I am ambitious, we must be ambitious. We have the moment that we are going to show that we can have economic returns and at the same time we can have social return for the society. I think so, my dream. Yeah?
So we are already hearing like a good example of innovative mechanism that you are using. Can you tell us a little bit more about example from your organization that you are using to respond to these challenges? I'm thinking, for example, maybe to you, Borja, with Citibank that you are.
Yeah, we do a lot of work, as I mentioned, try to do with MDB, multilateral banks, DFIs. I think a particular good example that we have is a program that is called Scaling Enterprise. It's a program that is focusing on fintech, and the way that this works is a bit of blended finance structure. So this is a program that we have with DFC, which is the development finance institution from the US, with the Ford Foundation and Citi. And the way that this works is you have a framework in which Citi is normally lender of record of these transactions, focusing on companies that don't really have access to credit in the markets, but that we see a lot of potential to start growing and that they need this kind of funding. So we have this partnership with Horn Foundation and DFC, and we split the risks, right? It's similar to the structure that Tim was mentioning. You have a first loss that is covered by the Horn Foundation, and then DFC and Citi split the risk. So I hope to, this is a 100 million program, but I hope to see more of these kind of programs, because it's really providing what this company needs, which is local currency financing, particularly in emerging markets, and also with a tenor that is not really short-term facilities, more in the range of 2, 3, 4 years, right? So this is one particular example for public or public collaboration, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Other like kind of experiences or specific example for maybe blended finance models, so that
experience, but something where they are working with the social economy, in a lot of cases is only to obtain the financing. Only it's simple like that. Sometimes you have probably have heard about first loss, whatever. But sometimes when you're working with the social economy, is to have to be able to raise financing or not, because with this perception. And in our case, if we tackle the market failures, if we are really tackle where is the underserved, undercovered social challenges, will have really a strong impact in the society, no?
this is where we see you as a COFIDES. Tim, a specific example from your side, maybe?
Sure. So I think we benefited from two things. One is the fact that we have a foundation helps us de-risk the execution of business plans by the companies in our portfolio. So our foundation provides technical assistance to help with product innovation, market expansion, consumer credit facilities, impact measurement, and all this adds to execution capacity. One of the biggest risks you have when you bet on entrepreneurial talent is, are they going to be able to execute their business plan even in difficult circumstances? And by having a complementary instrument through the foundation, I think that was really helpful for our venture investments in Africa and Latin America. And the other thing that I'm really keen to see happen is, we know that developing countries have the biggest hurdle in terms of funding their SDGs, right? They have to receive $4 trillion per year to finance SDGs in developing countries. And it would be great if we somehow managed to start partnering with local investors, because there's a lot of wealth being created in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia. And if we can bring these investors into the conversation of impact investing alongside Europeans and Americans, I think we can unlock a lot of new resources and local insights for strategies for development.
Thank you, Tim. And Lynn, yeah, maybe from your VC perspective.
I just also want to comment on that, because I think it's also go for the European market or developing countries, so to speak. Because I think we can also have a long way to go here as well when it comes to impact investing. And there's still a lot of both companies, institutions, countries, foundations, maybe not foundations, but high-net individuals and so forth, that still prefer more traditional investment vehicles. And I think that's also a risk, to not be exposed to impact investing at all. So I think there's also a risk picture there. And I think a lot of the solutions developed, for example, in Europe, where we invest, is also applicable for other places in the world, where we have a lot of expertise or niche competence. And I truly believe in building what I call unfair advantages, that we use the advantages we have from the educational institutions, from technology perspective and so forth, and to export those technologies where it's relevant, and vice versa, obviously. So.
No.
Great. And I was wondering if, in terms of, is there any key industries or sector where you think, okay, in the future now we should really put special attention to this?
Really open, I think. Really, social innovation, I think, is something where we can talk about energy or whatever, health or whatever, but really is social innovation is how we solve the real problems of the society through innovation. I think it's one of the
I think that's something that we're seeing more and more, is that normally nowadays is climate social, no? So something that we're seeing more and more in all these conferences and panels is how you combine both. To be honest with you, sometimes I don't really know how to do it, because we're asked to do almost everything on the investments that we do. Yeah. But I think that a topic, not for the future, maybe on the present and more coming on the future, is that combination of how you tackle basically the social issues with the climate issues, because at the end of the day, I don't think that you can separate both, right? So I think this is something we're seeing more and more.
United Nations today make sure impact challenge in environmental side and climate change with social
Transactions,
I really agree. I have to comment on that as well, because that really ties into our investment thesis, where we do both climate and our environmental impact on one side and societal on the other side. We tie our climate mandate into sustainable cities, because it's very much linked to the societal effect. And I think we did some research into numbers, but I think by 2050, more than 80% of the world will live in big cities. And that, of course, have a lot of effects on health, but also on the education system and retraining. And obviously the planet, we need to find more sustainable ways to live in these cities, both with the use of technology, but also hardware, of course.
Absolutely. And maybe we can add also the role of technology, which I think will play a big role for cities, sustainable cities. But if you look at microfinance, which was really the beginning of a commercial approach for sustainable development, and that led to then impact investments in energy and water and buildings. Microfinance had a dramatic turn when we moved into fintech, right? Fintech completely accelerated the growth of financial inclusion services in developing countries. It's also now become ubiquitous in Europe and the US. And fintech has democratized also the access to all sorts of financial services. And now, with the advent of artificial intelligence, I cannot see what's going to happen, but I know something is going to happen, something big. And I think it'll be interesting to model in our future strategies how we can benefit from and include technological changes like artificial intelligence to expand the reach of our impact with the same level of resources. I think that'll be very interesting.
With technology and AI, we have a real challenge. If you look at the figures, for example, of the patents that are in the World PO, World Patent Organization, the first 200 institutions, there's only one European company.
Wow.
Only one. It's not a company. It's the Fraunhofer Institute from Germany. Is in the position 178. The rest of companies, institutions are Chinese or US, from US. I think we have a real problem for coming year, but what I'm sure is the development of the results of these patents and products. We're not thinking about how we can have a better world, probably. It's our role also to public institutions, to multilateral institutions, to think about more, I think, out of the box in this sense. I think European Union in this case is working, for example, on that, is how IA could also benefit the people, not only the company, but I think the problem is not the AI, the problem is the business model that is under all these technologies.
Yeah, and maybe also we already heard about like a very innovative partnership happening. So which collaboration do you think are key to push also the agenda forward?
I think I said at the beginning, but I think that, again, this sometimes, and again, I came from the multilateral banks, I'm in the private sector now, but I feel sometimes that we are working in different directions, right? So I really think that this, let's call it public-private collaboration is critical, but with real action, right? Because, again, you go to all these forums and different places and a lot of words, but it's more what kind of programs we can put in place to mobilize more private sector capital, let's say, right? So I think that is going to be key if we really want to achieve the goals that we have, right?
And you were mentioning earlier the United Nations, and they had their big annual conference in New York just a few weeks ago. And a lot of people are saying that the multilateral order is dying, right? And that it's becoming harder to collaborate in these international forums and the United Nations, etc. But what I'm seeing in our industry is exactly the opposite, that we have a lot stronger incentive to collaborate. And we see this not just within the private sector of different countries, but also with the public sector, the philanthropic sector, because together we have a track record of being much more successful than if we try things alone. And I hope that this could be an example also at some point for politicians and countries.
No. I joined COFIDES the last year in October, and one of the greatest things that I found after more than 200 meetings with different institutions, from startups from foundation, funds, everything, is a strong spirit of collaboration between them. I have several meetings, for example, with ethical banks, with different banks, talking about how they measure the risks, etc. I cannot imagine a JP Morgan to another institution working about that. What I think is like, I found is what is incredible and really powerful here is there is a common purpose that will be, I think, probably more powerful than what we have outside here. It is something that we'll be able to change in some ways this world is something better or something.
Yeah. And I didn't hear the word of civil society, but I just wanted to, as representative from a civil society organization, we are really interested here also working hand in hand with the various actors, and we are already doing it, working with fund managers, trying to develop also new products, so happy to work on this together. And I think maybe it's a good moment to open the floor to the public. So we have only 5 minutes. So let's start with one question here. Yeah.
There's a mic over there.
There's a micro here. Oh, great. Thank you.
Hello, yeah. Thank you very much for that interesting panel. I'm working at FITrust in France. We are a social impact private equity investment manager, a pioneer. And the role of finance to catalyze social progress. If finance wants to catalyze social progress, it needs to be patient. And I think this was raised by a few of the panelists, that we know by experience in France and also in Europe, that for a social business to reach its break-even, when you employ disabled people, it can take 10 years. Okay? So the funds today are on a very short-term view, like 5 + 5, 5 years of investment, 5 years of exit. It doesn't fit what social businesses need. So the role of finance is also to be patient, to take risks, but to be patient, to support, as you said, and mentoring entrepreneur.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other question? Maybe we grabbed a few questions and then you can.
Well, thanks a lot. It's very interesting. So I'm Valérie Mazon. I'm managing Danone Communities, an impact investment fund. And my question is regarding incentive for the fund. Do you implement impact incentive on top of financial, but making sure that impact is first reach and then financial return?
I can start to comment on that from our side. In LUMO Labs, we have tied the impact measurements and impact goals to our own carry. So it's really incentivized. And I think for like a venture fund, that's almost the only way we can ensure that the fund will always seek to do the impact returns. Of course, in addition to the financial returns, this is a for-profit. But I think to have the incentive model carried to the impact goals is crucial, especially for venture. When we invest so early stage, the companies will change, they will pivot when they grow. So it's very important that we are aligned on the impact side throughout the journey of the companies.
Yeah. Any other experience, maybe? Or?
I think, for example, in our case, we are, in November, will be operative, but the procedure, what I think is the first step is to really define and also to be sure that we have an impact investment fund there. Is really the intentionality is very clear. In a fund also, this intentionality you can show through the incentive, for example. How would you manage if you are not reaching the goals that you say that you will be to Mariluz? What's happened? I found some cases in funds, for example, where I ask, okay, what happens if you don't reach these social KPIs or whatever? Nothing will be, the next year will be better. No. It's an answer, real answer. And also really, you have your theory of change that really show what are you tackling, what social challenges, your KPIs, and also the financial sustainability of what you are doing. For example, in the cases where we have funds that have some track record, well, what is really important is to look at, for example, the startup that they have invested. It's incredible how do you see if an impact investment fund is an impact investment fund or not? When you look at the investment they have done, and also the pipeline that they are looking at.
And maybe quickly on the point of duration, I think foundations that have endowments and pension funds are very good partners to invest for very long term, 10 to 20 years. But most of them have still not invested for impact or not big amounts. So we need to focus on endowed foundations across Europe and in Switzerland, as well as pension funds, and remove the barriers for them to start committing serious assets to longer term projects. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. There was a question here. I don't want to forget you.
Yeah, actually, that was kind of my question. Well, I'm Isabella. I'm a journalist for The Objective. And I was going to ask on that innovation that is happening when you rethink the fiduciary duty in pension funds, and if you can probe it further on that point.
Okay, so fiduciary duty on pension funds. The pension funds manage money for the people that they're going to finance the retirement of, right? And so by definition, it's long term. It's multiple decades, multiple generations. And it is irresponsible for any asset manager today to ignore future risks related to climate change and social inclusion and other issues related to sustainability. So I think there's a very clear case to be made that fiduciary duty has to be reinterpreted, that pension funds must factor in their investment strategies these future risks and their impacts, and that the only way really to protect your beneficiaries from these future risks is to invest with a measurable and positive impact. And you don't need to wait for the world to be perfect to start putting 1% of your assets in impact, right? Start today. There's 600 funds, 250 fund managers. There's $2 trillion invested. There is no reason any pension fund would not be able to invest today in some product across any asset class for impact.
I think one of the best examples that we have in Europe is in France. The difference that made France was when they have probably you know the rule 10-19 is all the employment pension funds are forced to invest 10% of what they are doing in social companies. It really makes the difference. In UK, for example, they use another model that was to use the dormant accounts, all the money of the people who are not using for 30 years, etc., to really to impact funds. It's an example, but for the case of France is really incredible.
I am so sorry. Me and my Dutchness are back. Guys, we only have one panel left, and then these lovely people will be able to do the whole networking in-person part. So I'm going to cut you off, but I'm going to invite you to talk to them off stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm telling
I'm
you.
really strict here, I tell you. Now, just like a last big thank you to all our panelists. And yeah, of course, let's continue the conversation after.
Just to start, guys. Just